So we've all had a few weeks now with the new HARMAN Phoeonix II stock, and I've seen a lot of videos of people reviewing this film stock, and I want to just give my 2 cents. So in this video, I just want to talk a little bit about our learning curve and what we found works best for both HARMAN Phoeonix I and II. So if you just got the film, I recommend you watch this and learn from our mistakes and learn from our learning curve so that you can get the best results possible with this rather experimental film stock. So something that a lot of people notice is that HARMAN Phoeonix II specifically is a very light-hungry film. So I was struck by the fact that even though we metered and shot in bright daylight for our first video, a lot of the shots came out a little bit underexposed. With this batch, we metered at 160, which basically means that you're tricking your light meter into thinking your film is less sensitive so that you get settings that give you more light. So I recommend if you're shooting HARMAN Phoeonix for the first time, meter it at 160 ISO. That will give you much better results than if you're metering at 200 ISO. So let's look at a few images that we got. I'm going to start with Pheonix I, and this film has just this beautiful, very strong orangey red. So these images were shot on the Mamiya 6, rated at 160. And you can see here kind of the difference between this is properly exposed and what happens when you underexpose a little bit. And I will say that I almost like the underexposed one a little bit better. We're not going for the most natural digital-like look here. I'm going for something where you can see that it's film, you can see the grain, you can see that there's an artistic touch to it. I'm not going for a perfect reproduction of what I saw. You can see in these images, for example, the reflection on the high rises gives you that halation, and you don't really get that with digital. Of course, you can edit it into, but to me, that's a nice surprise. So here we got some shots shooting directly into the sun. I think this image works so well because of that dreamlike color. And this is another point to consider when you're shooting with these more experimental, less traditional film stocks. You might get less perfect images per roll. So there's a few in there that are just misexposed or just didn't quite work out, but there are some images in here that I really, really love. These ones, I think the way it renders the shadows, obviously in this image specifically, we're losing almost all of the details in the shadows, but that's okay because we're shooting for the silhouette. If you don't have the expectation of just perfect detail in the shadows, you can use that to your advantage and use that for your own creativity. But you need to know about it. So learn from our mistakes, learn from our images, learn from other people's images. So it can be a tough thing to say to just go out there and shoot. I understand that it's expensive. And even with the inconsistencies of this film, sometimes there are shots that really surprise you. For example, in this image, before we edited it, the highlights are quite blown out, and obviously the foreground is quite dark still, but with just a little bit of edit, you really can get a lot of details out of the highlights, especially with TIFF files, while retaining the details in the shadows. And it's not a perfect exposure, but I am actually impressed with how it deals with this rather difficult lighting situation. And let's not forget that this is a film stock that's being newly developed. There are people out there who are building this film stock from scratch. It's not a repurposed cinema film like a lot of other films. It is literally made from scratch. And I think that shows us that film is not only not dead, it is actually evolving, and there's value in HARMAN listening to photographers and seeing what they create with this film stock, pointing out its difficulties and inconsistencies while also appreciating the film for what it is. And I personally want to support and embrace that, and I've had an amazing time shooting with these films. I think we got some really good results, and it's been a fun challenge for myself, who usually shoots just traditional films. So in this instance, for this photo, I want to talk about skin tones, because this film is very sensitive towards reds, which can be tough to adjust to everybody's skin tones. So I want to show you what the TIFF file looked like and then how I edited it. So here we go. There's a slight green cast because it is fairly low light, but I do think that we can get a lot out of this. So let's just see. I did some masking, which it is fine to use the masking tool for film. It's just dodging and burning with a little bit of help of AI. So I did a mask here and I adjusted the skin color. It's still very warm, and that's because we actually shot during sunset, so there is just a very warm tint to my face. I separated the background and the foreground just to get a little bit better, more accurate colors. So I think when you're scanning or when you get TIFF files from the lab, make sure you do your own color corrections to your liking. If you see your scans and they all have like a strange color cast, that's fine. You can work with that and you can adjust the colors however you want. I'm going to show just a few more before and afters of the TIFF files versus the edit. And what I usually do is I adjust the blacks, I raise the shadows a little bit, sometimes I reduce the highlights a bit, just depending on what the sky is doing. I also adjust the white balance. You can go a lot deeper with it, you can change all of the hues and the shadows and the highlights, but I just wanted to do a basic edit for these just to show you what's possible with just a few tweaks. So in this photo, I actually like the original green cast because I am among greenery. So I do think it highlights it, but with a little bit of editing, it makes my skin tone just a little less green. But I think there is the case for leaving it with the green cast because it does render the greens, if there are greens in the image, very beautifully. For some of these, I also added a little bit more contrast. That's my personal taste. I think it makes the skyline in this case pop a little bit more. Totally up to you. In this image, I masked the sky and actually added more contrast in the sky to see more of the clouds. This image, for example, you can see that you're losing the detail in the shadows, but that creates this beautiful contrast. And this image was exposed for the highlights, accepting the fact that we're not going to get all of the details in the shadows. So in this image, the shadows are used for the composition. And I think that's something, like I said earlier with the silhouette, to keep in mind while shooting. Embrace the quirkiness of this film to your advantage. So in this image again, it's exposed for the highlights, which means we're accepting the shadows as a part of the composition. We can tell it's shot on film. It does not look like a digital image, and a lot of us shoot exactly for that reason. And I do think that this would have looked totally different with a more traditional film, but I love this image because it looks so different in a way and unexpected. So all these photos I just shown, the first half was Pheonix I, a little bit more orangey, very punchy, and then the others were Pheonix II. And it's interesting to me that we shot with 3 different cameras and had 3 fairly different results. The results that you get with this film depend on how you shoot, what you shoot with, how you edit. There's so much control in your hands, and I think it is worth to experiment and try what you like and what you don't like. Now we're heading into the 35mm photos we took with the HARMAN Phoeonix II. These were shot on the Canon EOS 1V. So you still have the same halation that we saw in the 120 film, but it's a little bit less, and we also can see more visible grain, which that makes sense because the negative is just a little smaller. Here, for example, we see this beautiful halation on the water, and once again the shadows are quite dark, but it creates this beautiful contrast between the dark area right here and the very bright halation-y area over here. I think this style of imagery is exactly the type of images that you want to get with this film stock. You can see what happens when you underexpose a little bit, and I actually like this image a little bit more, even though it is underexposed, because it feels even more film-like and more dreamy in a way. If you overexpose this film a little bit, you have more leniency when it comes to editing. If you underexpose, you have less options in the edit. This image I really love because it uses the shadowy area of the film so beautifully for its composition. And I love that you can't see anything in most of the image really, because it highlights the subject so well. These images really show you what you can do with the color here. The reds on this film, amazing. So do I recommend shooting with this film? Absolutely. You should go out there and try it out. This is not a film that can be used for everything, but if you learn to use it correctly, you can get amazing results. One really nice use for this film, I think, will be the fall colors, because reds and oranges just pop so nicely. So I'm actually really excited about fall coming up and using this film to shoot fall foliage. The main difference I see between Pheonix I and Pheonix II is that first one is distinctly more experimental, and Pheonix II really finds a middle ground between creating natural or more natural looks while still having a very distinct and punchy style. So those are my 2 cents on the new HARMAN Phoeonix II and the first HARMAN Phoeonix film stocks. I really enjoyed shooting with them, and I think I'm going to integrate them into my workflow, even though I'm not entirely sure yet how I'm going to do that. So thank you for watching. I hope this was helpful for everyone who wants to shoot HARMAN Phoeonix II, or who maybe has shot before and hadn't gotten the best results. Show me your photos, I want to see them, and also leave a comment to let me know whether or not I did a good job with these photos.